Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me again tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about what the Bible has to say about finances, and there's a lot. So we're going to talk about bad debts, a good steward, and about giving, tithing, and anyway, we're just going to get into it. But there's a lot of scripture. So we're probably going to hang out mostly in like Proverbs area. But excuse me, I've still got the cough. I've had a headache for about 7 days. So the cough is not helping. Just bear with me. We'll get through this. So tonight, I want to start with Romans 13:8. It's a good place to start for... It says, owe no one anything except for loving one another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. So right there, it's just talking about, don't be owing except for love. So, I mean, you really can't say much more than that. So bad debt is, well, of course, it does not look good for anybody, but to say you're a Christian and then, be filing bankruptcy more than several times or bouncing checks, none of that looks good for a Christian. So we want to talk first about having bad debt. And I'm going to go to Proverbs. That's where I said we'd be most of the night. So Proverbs 22, 26 and 27 says, do not be one of those who shakes hands in a pledge, one of those who is surety for debts. If you have nothing on which to pay, why should he take away the bed from under you? So another version says, it's the same thing, but it does say, though, do not be one who shakes hands in a pledge or puts security for debts, because if you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you. I mean, that's a little simpler to understand, but that's, again, pretty plain. So don't pay for, or don't sign up for what you can't pay for. It's same as like people having cars repossessed or the rent to own, which I could go on about, but that's, first off, if you don't have money and you have to rent to own it, then you're paying a ridiculous amount of interest. It is not a good purchase. Sorry, I get so distracted because as I'm talking, thoughts jump into my head, and I'm trying to stick to my notes tonight. So, Ecclesiastes says, the wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously. That's Ecclesiastes 5:5. If you guys want to write some of these down, but I'm sorry, I keep doing that. But anyway, so you definitely just don't borrow more than you can pay. All right. If you know up front that buying a house is going to extend your paycheck, like you're going to live week to week, don't even go there. Lower your budget or rent for a while until you can afford it. Same with buying a vehicle. If you can't afford a $700 a month payment, buy used and get something that's like $400 a month. But there's things you can have. It just, you don't have to have right now everything your heart desires. So another one, let me go to Proverbs. 22:7. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a servant to the lender. So that is saying about lending. If you take out a loan, you're in debt, and there's nothing worse than someone trying to collect that debt that hounds you constantly. So I'm going to give you a story about me. I'm sorry about the dog. So when we were much younger, starting out, when we had just first bought our first home, Brian was the only one working at the time. And like 2 weeks, no, probably a week right before he fell out of a tree he was hunting. He fell 30 feet out of a tree. And like right before that happened, our insurance company at the time tried to sell us like a disability insurance that would pay your home payments if something would happen. And of course, you know, we're in our 20s thinking we're invincible, so we didn't need it. Well, 2 weeks later, man, we wish we would have had it, but you know, you couldn't get it then. So anyway, so during that time, he was laid up for, gosh, I know he had to wear like a back brace and stuff for quite a long time. He was off work. And like I said, we had just had a brand new car. We'd had a house. And we were not in church at the time. So we didn't have church family to help or anything. And anyway, we ended up getting bills. And they called, you know, constantly, the hospital wanting us to pay a certain amount of money. And it wasn't like SOMC is really good to work with you. They'll take payments, but this one wanted like a ridiculous amount of payments, like I want to say $300 some like a month, which I mean doesn't sound like a whole lot now, but when you're 20 something and you got a young family and all these new things and no work, that's a lot. So anyway, they pressured me so much that I ended up putting the hospital debt on a credit card. And I mean, looking back now, of course, I know some finances, but you know, you put, I think it was like $13,000 on a credit card knowing you can't pay it right away. So that interest each time, even if you're making a minimum payment, interest is accumulating and you end up paying back, you know, a small fortune. And so lesson learned, I'll never fall for that again. But, you know, they can't get blood out of a turnip, they say. So don't agree to something that you can't pay. That, you know, they'll have to take whatever payment you can send at this point. But the point is that you try. And I actually make payments now to SOMC. It's just a mandatory, like I pay $100 a month. I don't even pay attention really to a whole lot of the bills coming in because it's automatically going to this thing and I'm paying $100 a month. So set up yourself on a payment plan if you have to for something like that. But anyway, just try to avoid the credit card debt like I did. So then let's talk about, okay, so in Luke, it talks about if you can't be trustworthy handling worldly wealth, then who's going to trust you with the true riches, which is, you know, in heaven. Matthew is the parable of the talents where, you know, he gave so many talents to one and so many to the other and so many to the other. And basically the one who was given, hold on just a second, let me get my notes. So 2 men who were entrusted to choose more and invest their talents, they doubled their money. And the one who was basically one squandered it away, and he didn't do anything. And so, you know, he wasn't trusted with much more than that. So the story of that is just take what you have and spend it wisely. So good stewardship means first you have to work. You have to earn money to make money, to spend money. So if a man does not work, he shall not eat. That's Thessalonians 3:10. That's not me. That's Thessalonians. So, you know, there's a lot to be said. I'm sorry, I got to get this notice off of my phone. Okay. So, again, I'm back to don't spend more than you have. Now, when you're thinking about going into debt, you need to consider all the cost of it. And Luke 14:28 says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? So right there, very wise words. And, you know, if you're going to build a home or anything, you have to have a budget. And so even going smaller than that, if you're renting and you want to own, set yourself a budget. And, you know, start with budgeting groceries, you know, a small amount. And each week try to get by with a little less. I am by no means a financial advisor, but I have been there, and I, again, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but you know, I've learned, and I've learned quickly after the debt that I was in. how to handle money. And now I'm actually, knock on wood, pretty good with it. And our finances are in great shape. But it's not me. God's blessed us, and we tithe. And when we were broke and we couldn't afford anything, it was rent or tithing, we tithed. And we just had the faith that God was going to take care of us, and he did. So that was on to I'm actually jumping ahead a little bit, but on to giving. You know, we're called to tithe, but even if you don't have it and you think, I have to pay this or that, or do it anyway. I'm telling you to tithe anyway, because it's going to come through. It always does. It always has. So I say that with much confidence. Let's see. So in Proverbs, let's see, 21:20, it says, a wise man saves for the future, but a foolish man spends whatever he gets. So it does show that it is important to save money. And I know that people say, oh, you can't take it with you. And that's true. But you also have to be wise enough to plan ahead for the future, because nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. And, you know, God forbid you end up in a nursing home or something. That takes money. And if you don't have that, you know, who's going to take care of you? And you can't leave a debt, you know, for your kids or anyone else to have to handle. So you need to be wise enough to save for your future. And another example of people who save, it talks about in Proverbs 6, verses 6 through 8, it says, learn from the ants. They gather food in the summer to have enough through the winter. So, you know, just like the field I'm in, we do construction, and, you know, there's always highs and lows. And sometimes the guys get laid off for 2 and 3 months at a time in the winter or whatever, just whenever the seasons, you know, they change. They know, and you learn that in this trade, that you have to save while you're working to put away for when you're laid off. And so it's the same thing that Ants is talking about there. So back to giving in Malachi, and I'm going to go there. Malachi 3:10. It says, bring all the tithes to the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and try me now in this. If I will not open for you windows of heaven and pour out for you such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it. So there, okay, first off, let's break that down. Bring all tithes to the storehouse. Well, what is a tithe? A tithe is 10% of your income. And that is off of your gross, not your net. So 10% right off the top, that's of your first goods. You take to the storehouse, which is the church. Now, I've heard people say, and, you know, like, for an example, our church, we take in pop a lot for the youth. You know, that's not your tithing. That's above and beyond. That's an offering. So all of your tithing, the 10% of your gross, no matter what else you think you need to do with it, it goes to the church. The church, the elders, you know, they decide where that money's distributed, not you. So anything else you want to do beyond that, then that would be considered your offering. So anyway, and then it says, try me in this and see if I will not open up the windows of heaven. And I promise it's happened to me more times than I can count. Just be faithful in tithing. Let's see. Let me get on to another one. So trust him more than we trust wealth. That's a good saying. So saving's good, but don't let money become your master. Because, you know, we've heard it said in the Bible, you cannot serve two masters. And you will love one and hate the other. So make sure that the God's before the money. And if you focus on honoring him first, the blessings will follow. Says also in Philippians that my God will meet all your needs and according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. You know, sometimes you don't even realize that what he saved you from. So, you know, I could have actually the other day driving right in front of my bank, an older man driving a truck, never even looked when he was pulling out of the bank lot, never even looked, like there was no other road. He was the only one on the road. And he pulled out right in front of me. So God saved me from an accident that I would have had to pay, $1,000 deductible for my vehicle and, a rental car and all that. So there's things like that you're blessed with you don't even realize you take for granted, He could save you with your health from paying medical bills. There's just all kinds of ways to think about that. So anyway, let's talk about the dangers in money. And there is danger in it because, like I said, whoever loves money never has enough. And whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. It is meaningless. Now, that is a true statement. And it's like the more you make, the more you want. And I don't know, you feel like you're worth more, you deserve more. But God's blessing you with right where he wants you to be at that time. You're in your point in life and you're getting what you need to, supply your needs. That's what he's promised. He's not promised we'd be rich. He's promised to take care of us and supply our needs. So, money does not buy happiness. And those who love money, they're chasing, wealth, and they're chasing after something that's going to leave them unhappy. Excuse me. I have Ecclesiastes 5:10. Let me see if I have that marked here. I did not. Let's see. Hold on just a second. About that, I was getting a phone call. I think there's something urgent on our prayer line going on, and I can't get to it right now. Where was I? Okay. So, which I already talked about, the money is the root of all kinds of evil when we love money. It can lead to hoarding, selfishness, and wicked thoughts and a poor spirit. And the love of money, it says, is the roots of all kinds of evil, though its craving, some have wandered away from faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. That's in 1 Timothy. So one thing, a faithful person, Proverbs 28:20, it talks about a faithful person being richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished. Now, in my mind, what I'm thinking on that is, say you get offered overtime. You don't have to work it. You don't need the money. I mean, you want money, of course. Everybody wants money. But do you have to work it? Are you being forced to work the overtime? Or could you go to church if you wanted to? I think that's where the difference is as far as your want. God knows your heart, and that's what he's always going to judge. So do you want the money over going to church? Then I think that's wrong. Now, if you are in a position where you have to work overtime or, someone's called off and they really need you or that is your opportunity to pay a debt you desperately need to pay and you don't have any extra, then that I think is okay. But, God's given you that opportunity, but don't be doing it out of greed and skip going to church and being faithful to God. Don't put the money first. And then, let's see. Oh, I guess one last thing. It says contentment is key, which is true, and it's hard to be content. I'm one, my husband will tell you, I get packages delivered here like several times a week. But granted, now, most of it's Temu, and it's cheap stuff, and I am the queen of thrifting. And in fact, if you call my cell phone and you listen to my voicemail message, it says I'm either at church, work, or out thrifting. So most of the clothes I wear are Goodwill, yard sale, or very bottom dollar clearance rack. I hardly ever go into any department store and buy anything off the rack. It's either a clearance item, like last chance clearance. I love Macy's Backstage. They have $2 and $3 things. I'm cheap, but you know what? Actually, frugal. Frugal is the word. And But you could not tell by looking at my clothes any different. And by doing that, like I said earlier, with our lessons that we had in our finances, we learned start paying everything ahead. So we got that credit card debt. We would double, triple the payment until we, got that paid down. Well, then when we bought our new house, we had, of course, the sale of our old house, but then we tripled up our payments and had this house was going to be a 15-year loan. We had it paid off in 3. Our vehicles, we pay them off because we double and triple the payments. So we are tight. Both of us are tight people, but we're also debt-free. So I'd rather be debt-free and tight and wear cheap clothes. Because number one, I like to change my stuff anyway, and I always like something new. And, if I ruin something because I'm bad about cooking in my clothes, and getting oil on them. So, I'm only wasting a couple of dollars and it's not a $30, $40 shirt. When we go to formals, which we go every year to a formal dance, I spend $20, $30 top on a formal dress. A lot of people spend, $150, $200. If I can't get something formal for $20, $30, I'm not going. So anyway, that's just some of my, it's not Dave Ramsey talking here. That's just some of my frugal tips and some financial advice out of the Bible. But remember, just practice moderation with your finances and always put God first. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.